Lesnar be unlucky victim number 13, or will Carwin get hit by an F5 tornado? Can Leben make it 2 in 2 weeks? And will Sotiropoulos play the Riddler for Batman? Sit back, this is the Fight Network's official preview of UFC 116.
Hey there, fight fans. My name is John Pollock. We're getting set for UFC 116 this Saturday night at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. John Ramdeen will be along in just a few short minutes to break down the card. UFC 116 is going to feature a light heavyweight rematch from UFC 110. The crippler Chris Leben returns to the octagon after a 14-day rest, and the main event features two of the hardest-hitting heavyweights in the sport as they meet to unify the UFC heavyweight title.
In the main event of UFC 116, Brock Lesnar returns to the octagon after contracting diverticulitis, which took him away from the sport for a year. Due to the layoff, an interim championship was created and won by 12-0 knockout artist Shane Carwin. It's power versus power in this highly anticipated heavyweight bout, where one man will stand atop the UFC heavyweight mountain.
It's an interesting matchup. Both guys have strong wrestling backgrounds. Both guys are big, strong bangers with 4-ounce gloves on. It kind of, I think obviously Lesnar's a little bit bigger athlete. It could be a coin toss, really. So.
I don't like Lesnar. To be honest, I think Shane Carwin, has that knockout power. He's probably the biggest guy that Brock has fought. So, I just think Brock has that big size advantage over a lot of the heavyweights, so he's able to control them, so.
I don't think that Carwin can beat him, but like I said, one punch. And it could be over. So I'm not going to rule Brock. I'm not going to rule Carwin out, but I'm going to go with Brock.
It's a sleeper, man. I mean, I think Brock Lesnar has all the tools to beat Shane, and I think I'm leaning a little bit more on Brock, just because. I mean, I'm saying he's athletic and big and strong, but so is Shane Carwin. Shane Carwin explodes, he'll put Brock to sleep. Same with Brock, but there's no prediction. 50-50, man.
Carwin.
Why?
I think that Carwin stand hands. I think Brock's have a hard time taking him down. He might get the first 2 takedowns. After that, he's gonna have a hard time taking him down.
I have to give the edge to Brock. He's got reach. He's got great takedown defense, and he's got great takedowns, and he's got a lot of size and athleticism. So it's got the potential to be a great fight.
Be interested to see if either guy goes out and tries to take the other guy down, both as big and strong as they are with the wrestling backgrounds they possess. So it's one of those fights you definitely want to watch because you're not really sure how it's going to come out.
After many believed his career was over, UFC heavyweight champion Brock Lesnar is back in the spotlight again for the biggest heavyweight title fight in history. The former WWE superstar overcame a bout with diverticulitis, an intestinal disorder, and he is now hoping to overcome his next UFC challenge against unbeaten powerhouse Shane Carwin. Since dedicating himself to mixed martial arts, Lesnar has trounced 3 veterans in Heath Herring, Randy Couture, and Frank Mir. Minnesota MMA head coach Greg Nelson has been astounded at Lesnar's rapid progress since committing himself to the sport.
When Brock Lesnar first came into the gym, he literally said, "Hey, I'm a blank slate. Fill me in." And it was, there wasn't this big ego. Hey, I'm going to do this. This is what I want to do. No, he just really said, hey, I want to learn as much as I can. He had the intangibles. He had the speed, the strength, and athleticism that's not at all normal for a guy that size. And that's something that people, you can't necessarily train for. Okay, we got to train for a guy who's that big, who can move that fast, who's that agile, who's that strong, and who's very flexible. He can head kick guys as tall as he can if he wants to. But you got a guy like that. It's the other parts are easy. To train an athlete that's that good. It's an easy thing. And then now it's up to the other guys to try to find someone to mimic that. And that's even some of the fighters said that's been the problem. How do we mimic a guy who's not just big, but fast, strong, and agile?
In addition to his willingness to learn and eagerness to succeed, Lesnar possesses many natural gifts that made him an immediate threat to the heavyweight landscape.
You gotta remember, here's a guy that was, when he was in the WWE, you watch his highlight, he's doing a backflip gainer off the top rope and landing on another person. That's incredible for a guy that size to be able to do. So there's a lot of athleticism that he brought from that game. And so doing little moves like getting a Kimura or getting a V-lock, you know, that came pretty quickly at first, you know. And then in wrestling, he was always a hard person to hold down. You know, people just couldn't hold him down. So getting off his back was fairly easy for him, you know. He could really shift his hips fast for a big guy. He could get up, he knew where to push. You know, and then so he did a lot of his goes. He would start a lot of his goes off his back. Say, okay, I'm in the guard or I'm on my back, let's go. And again, good guys, you know, good big guys, you know. So, you know, that was a big thing to see. You know, now the goal would be hopefully that he would be able to develop you know, a dangerous guard. You know, imagine that, you know.
After a hiatus spanning nearly a full calendar year, it remains to be seen how ring rust will factor into Lesnar's title defense on Saturday night.
Uma luta dura porque eu acho que, na verdade, ninguém sabe como que o Brock vai voltar, né, dessas coisas que ele teve problema, né. Mas eu acho que dá Brock Lesnar, porque ele é cara muito forte pro peso ali.
The 35-year-old Carwin presents an interesting challenge for Lesnar in that he also possesses crushing one-punch knockout power.
You got two guys who can hit awful hard, but one guy is a known knockout artist. That's Shane Carwin. He's knocked out everybody he's been in front of just, yeah, he's stopped everybody. You know, Brock hits hard too, all right? But the biggest thing is Shane Carwin, by nature, is a better boxer. You can see it, his movement's better, he feels more comfortable in there, he wants to be in the pocket. He's not afraid to be in the pocket, but at the same time, he's got that mass and he's got that ability to take someone down.
With only 5 professional fights under his belt, one of them a loss, many feel Lesnar's ability to take a punch will be a detrimental factor in the bout with Carwin.
I think Lesnar is such a phenomenal wrestler. I don't see where he's going to beat him. But nobody's ever seen Lesnar's chin either, so you never know.
Shane Carwin can hit. If he ever lands anything on your jaw, you're going to feel it.
You know, obviously when you're dealing with two big guys like that, you know, one punch can end the fight.
I'm leaning a little bit more Brock Lesnar because, you know, he's the champ and he's great and he's, I don't know, but if Shane Carwin beats him, knocks him out cold, don't be surprised.
Somebody is probably going to go to sleep in that fight, and it kind of depends on who lands that shot.
Although both men are accomplished wrestlers, Lesnar will undoubtedly possess the edge as he comes from a more decorated amateur background, finishing his career as a 2-time NCAA All-American and 2000 NCAA heavyweight champion with a record of 106-5 in 4 years of college. Lesnar's sheer size and strength may indeed be a difference maker.
Brock Lesnar é o urso branco, né? O urso polar. Acho que esse cara ninguém vai ganhar dele, não.
I think that Brock is more explosive. I think Brock is obviously a better wrestler, and I think he's a better athlete.
Brock can take him down. He's got an explosive double leg. He can take him down. He'll win the match.
Unlike some of his critics, Carwin is not convinced Lesnar is a superior wrestler and looks forward to finally testing himself in a challenge 10 years in the making.
It's been a long time coming, and I speak to it as like destiny. Brock and I were both national champions around the same time in wrestling, and we never got to meet in wrestling. And you know, here we are, 10 years later, and we finally get to meet. And it's on a much bigger stage, the best stage in the world. And you know, I'm excited for it.
In order to prepare for what is surely the stiffest test of his career, Lesnar enlisted the help of mixed martial arts trailblazer Randy Couture, the man he defeated to win the championship. Couture is confident a leaner and refocused Lesnar will emerge triumphant.
I think for Brock's future in fighting, he's doing all the right things. I mean, look at this facility. How many athletes make that kind of commitment to isolate themselves, bring in great trainers, great training partners, and put the time and energy and work into being a well-rounded, top-notch fighter. Obviously, he's already at the top of the game, so really the sky's the limit. He can achieve and stay in this as long as he wants to. So you know, I think those are important things, and I'm going to have him on track to go out and do his thing when the 3rd of July comes around.
Shane Carwin, a prodigy of Greg Jackson and Trevor Whitman and training partner of top stars such as Rashad Evans and George St. Pierre, has taken the UFC heavyweight division by storm, stopping all 12 of his adversaries by first-round knockout.
Carwin has only showed like 5% of what he can do. I sparred with Carwin, and he surprised me with the last stuff he can do. He's pretty athletic, and he's pretty powerful.
Humble engineer out of the cage, Carwin is all business when he steps into the octagon, something Frank Mir and Gabriel Gonzaga found out firsthand. The X factors will be Lesnar's chin and Carwin's ability to thwart takedowns. If Carwin forces Lesnar into a stand-up slugfest, it will turn into a dangerous battle for the champion Lesnar, who is intent on backing up his claims of being the best heavyweight in the sport. Bragging rights and divisional supremacy are on the line when these two heavyweight Goliaths clash on Saturday night. Whoever lands the first big shot could very well be taking the gold home.
John Ramdeen joins us as we break down UFC 116, and it's coming up this Saturday night. John, Brock Lesnar and Shane Carwin, perhaps that biggest heavyweight bout of the year. Let's first chat about Brock Lesnar. We know of his health problems over the past year, and as a result has not fought since UFC 100 in July of last year. You've been down to Minnesota. How has Lesnar recovered from that setback, and how do you feel he is prepared for this bout?
Well, when I had a chance to talk to Greg Nelson, he says that Brock Lesnar's in tip-top shape. He's ready to go. We know he was training with Randy Couture, and Randy had nothing but great things to say about Lesnar's overall game, his conditioning, and of course his size. He dropped a little bit of weight, and he feels that this is the best Brock Lesnar that the world has ever seen. And of course Randy Couture would know. When it comes down to his mental and abilities going into this fight, this is a guy that's only had a handful of fights as it is, so I don't think the time off is going to be that big of a factor when he's facing Shane Carwin.
Conversely, on Shane Carwin's side, he works with Greg Jackson and the whole crew in Albuquerque, New Mexico. What kind of strategy are you preparing for Shane Carwin? Is it something as simple as going in and this is going to be a striking battle, or do you see wrestling coming into the equation?
Well, wrestling is definitely coming into the equation, no doubt about it, but it's the way that Shane Carwin uses the wrestling that will be interesting. Carwin, I think, will use his wrestling skills to avoid the takedown, keep this fight standing, and use his boxing skills. Greg Nelson, Brock Lesnar's coach, seems to believe that Carwin does have the advantage when it comes to the standing game. He says his boxing is crisper and cleaner, but again, I think for Brock Lesnar, we know he's been working with a number of top wrestlers in preparation for this fight, so clearly he wants to get this fight down to the ground, no doubt about it, and rain down his big, heavy ground and pound, and I think that's the best way for Brock Lesnar to win this fight.
Both of these guys, neither have really gone into the deep championship rounds in any of their bouts. Brock Lesnar has gone 15 with Heath Herring, but for Shane Carwin, he's someone that has never really gone past that point where we've seen what he can do. Do you see this fight going past round 2, or is this going to be a quick one?
Again, I have no idea. I think both guys, though, going into this fight, know that there's a chance that it will go all 5 rounds. So I think both guys, especially with their background in wrestling, they would have put the work in the gym and they would be prepared for 5 rounds, 25 minutes. So I think both guys, gas tank wise, I think the gas tank will be full for the full 25 minutes.
Now, before I get your pick, John, Fedor Emelianenko obviously losing to Fabricio Verdum last weekend. Where does the winner of this bout land in the overall heavyweight rankings in the sport? Do they ascend to #1 with a win?
Well, you said that this fight being one of the best heavyweight fights of the year, I think it's going to be one of the best heavyweight fights in the history of the sport, and I have to believe that the winner of this fight will emerge as the top heavyweight in the world, and you have to give props to Fabricio Verdum for pulling off the seemingly impossible by tapping out Fedor Emelianenko. So this fight, a gigantic fight for the heavyweight division in the grand scheme of things, and I think the guy who wins will be the top dog in the heavyweight division.
Well, who's going to be #1, John?
I'll look at my crystal ball and I will say either Brock Lesnar or Shane Carwin. Is that good enough?
There's our top-notch analysis.
Shane Carwin's second round knockout or Brock Lesnar by TKO.
The co-feature bout at UFC 116 will see the 20-6 Chris Leben, just 14 days removed from his TUF 11 finale victory over Aaron Simpson, return to the octagon as he replaces an injured Vanderlei Silva to collide with the 13-1 K1 Heroes veteran Yoshihiro Akiyama. Akiyama made his UFC debut last July at UFC 100, earning a split decision over Alan Belcher, and has not fought since. Leben enters this bout with a 2-fight win streak and has won 4 of his last 6.
Saturday night was supposed to showcase a fight between 2 of the now-defunct Pride Fighting Championship's biggest stars. Japanese judoka Yoshihiro Akiyama and former Pride middleweight champion Vanderlei Silva were on a collision course that promised nothing but absolute fireworks. Unfortunately, fans will have to wait for the violent encounter between the two because Silva was forced to withdraw from the matchup due to injury.
Tomar uma decisão muito difícil para mim. 3 médicos aqui, os 3 me deram o diagnóstico, viram minha ressonância e viram que realmente tinha rompido o ligamento do joelho. Passei por cima dele e continuei treinando, porque comecei a treinar só boxe. Aí, isso na última quinta-feira eu fiz um sparring de boxe. Aí nessa eu tava trocando, treinando boxe e acabei levando um cruzado embaixo. Peguei os raios-x, fiz a ressonância também. Vi que eu não estava com uma costela quebrada, estava com outras, tô com 3 costelas quebradas. Eu não vou lutar, infelizmente. Eu
With the co-main event in jeopardy, the UFC scrambled to find a suitable replacement when in stepped Ultimate Fighter 1 alum Chris the Crippler Leben to replace the injured Silva. Fresh off of a TKO victory over Aaron Simpson at the Tough 11 finale only 2 weeks prior, Leben is an interesting matchup style-wise for the durable Akiyama. With 4 wins and 2 losses in his past 6 outings, Leben has an opportunity to join the division's elite with an impressive performance over the highly touted middleweight. A powerful wrestler with KO power, Leben must avoid the grappling skills of his adversary and take control with his granite chin and iron fists. But more importantly, Leben must look to entertain a crowd who is hoping to see the formidable axe murderer face Soszynski in an epic war. In only his second professional mixed martial arts bout, Akiyama, a natural middleweight, was paired with K1 heavyweight slugger Jerome Lebanner. At the 224 mark of the first round, the judo gold medalist suffered defeat by knockout at the hands of a far more sized, skilled, and experienced competitor.
Down to the body, I think, is most important for him.
Akiyama, another knee,
and that's a knockout.
This fight is over. Taking a page out of Hellboy Hansen's playbook.
The loss to the French fighter would mark the only blemish on his impressive resume. Since then, Akiyama would go on to win 8 straight, all by way of stoppage. After finishing the likes of Melvin Manhoff and Dennis Kang, Akiyama would make his UFC debut at the heavily publicized UFC 100 event, where he would meet complete fighter Alan Belcher. After a 3-round war, Akiyama would take home the controversial split decision and win Fight of the Night bonus. The educated Akiyama holds a degree in commerce, and he knows the way to the big payday is through exhibition and his flares for the dramatic. This matchup may not be the one fight fans were hoping for, but with 2 exciting and emotional competitors, another Fight of the Night bonus check could be in the mail.
John, Chris Leben takes the spot of Wanderlei Silva. It's only going to be 2 weeks apart from his bout with Aaron Simpson. He goes into this fight with Akiyama, still in fight shape, but he did not come out of that Tough 11 finale show unscathed.
Yeah, for Chris Leben, it's not always the best thing to take a fight on short notice because a loss could really affect your record and in turn affect your career. But conversely for Akiyama, he's also fighting an opponent that he wasn't preparing for Wanderlei Silva. He had a specific strategy, although you look at this fight and Chris Leben, almost a poor man's Wanderlei Silva. He's a guy that likes to move forward, has a granite chin, likes to mix it up, but of course his wrestling skills are undeniable. It's a very interesting matchup that could be sleeper for Fight of the Night.
It was interesting with Akiyama because you bring up the judo background, and when he made his UFC debut against Alan Belcher, chose to kind of negate that aspect of his game and just stand and trade with Belcher, and I don't think that was to his benefit. It was a very close fight, one that I had Belcher winning.
A lot of people had Belcher winning that fight, but you know what? The fans benefited from Akiyama standing and trading. He knew that to come out and entertain the American crowd, that's what he had to do against a guy like Belcher, and I think the same thing is going to happen in this fight with Leben. Until he ends up getting hurt, then he'll be forced to try to get this fight down to the ground. But I think we're going to see an absolute slugfest between these 2 guys.
So can Leben pull off 2 in 2 weeks, or are we going to see Yoshihiro Akiyama secure his second UFC victory?
Again, I have no idea, but I am going to say that Akiyama does get the victory. You talked about it before. Chris Leben didn't come out of that fight unscathed, and I think Akiyama is going to be able to exploit that, but what do I know?
In what promises to be a hard-fought stand-up affair, 2 of the promotion's stalwarts at 170 will meet as 28-17-5 Chris Lytle meets 11-8 Matt Brown. This bout is actually a rematch from a 2007 United Fight League event that ended with Lytle submitting the Immortal with a guillotine choke. Lytle has earned the W in 3 of his last 4 with back-to-back wins heading into this bout, defeating Kevin Burns and Brian Foster in his last 2 outings. Tough 7 alumni Matt Brown has gone 4-2 in the UFC, with his last bout a submission loss to Ricardo Almeida.
John, this is a rematch from a 2007 United Fight League card where Chris Lytle had his arm raised in the first encounter. Since that time, Matt Brown has appeared on The Ultimate Fighter Season 8 and is engaged in fights with Ricardo Almeida, Dong Yoon Kim, and Pete Sell. So obviously, much more well-traveled since that 2007 fight.
What you have to look at is the experience factor. Of course, Matt Brown faced all the guys that you've mentioned, but for Chris Lytle, he's faced Josh Koscheck, Matt Serra, Matt Hughes, Nick Diaz, some of the top dogs in the welterweight division, so it's going to be very difficult for Matt Brown to take out Chris Lytle. What's interesting about this fight, I think these guys will be battling for the Fight of the Night. Both guys very exciting. For Chris Lytle, his submission skills are undeniable. I think he has 18 submission wins under his belt. Matt Brown, of course, training with George Grisel, so it's going to be very difficult to tap this guy out. I think this fight will be contested standing, both guys trying to get a knockout, and I really think that Chris Lytle will probably get the split decision, or Matt Brown will get the split decision. I think it's a very evenly matched up fight, and I think both guys are going to bring it.
Chris Lytle won the first fight. Who is going to win the rematch?
I would have to say, again, split decision for either guy, but I'm going to lean towards Lytle. I think he has the mental edge going into this fight, but do not count the Immortal out.
Saturday night will be a light heavyweight collision between two Ultimate Fighter products, with Season 1 finalist Stephan Bonnar meeting Season 8 graduate Krzysztof Soszynski in a rematch from their controversial UFC 109 bout that Soszynski walked away with his arm raised after a doctor's stoppage. Soszynski has won 7 of his last 8, including a 4-1 record inside the UFC, while Bonnar finds his back against the wall, owning a 3-fight losing streak heading into UFC 116.
No, yeah, he's a tough guy, and like he came out, he had a good start, and just watching the first couple minutes of that fight's embarrassing. So I got to get a little quicker start this time, and just in typical fashion, once I got punched in the face a couple times, I started to fight, and and then I picked it up and thought I won the second, and a headbutt happened to begin in the third. So I'm excited to do it again. I know it was a good fight. It was a war, and I plan on just continuing it and even picking up the pace a little.
It's kind of funny because the cut that he sustained in that fight is actually the shape of a K. It's hilarious. We have this really close-up of his forehead. But no, we just talked a little bit about the fight, how we would love to do it again. We even talked about it at the press conference that he would love to get in there and finish what we started. I would love to get in there and finish what we started. I think it would be a great fight for the fans, and I'm ready to do it again.
UFC 116 will feature another rematch, this one from UFC 110 this past February, between Krzysztof Soszynski and Ultimate Fighter Season 1 alumni Stephan Bonnar. In their first bout, John, a very close fight ending in controversy with an errant headbutt that the doctor stopped because of a cut to the head of Bonnar.
Yeah, very unfortunate. It was an entertaining fight, and I think both guys will go back to the drawing board, look at the tape, and come back better and stronger than they were in that first fight. And I think it will be Krzysztof Soszynski edging out Stephan Bonnar in this fight. I think he has more tools to beat Stephan Bonnar than Stephan Bonnar does to beat Krzysztof Soszynski. I think wrestling will be a key element. I think he'll try to get this fight down to the ground and try to go for his Kimura or just some ground and pound to beat the Ultimate Fighter 1 finalist.
With a loss, that would put 4 in a row for Stephan Bonnar, and would you see him on the chopping block at that point from the UFC?
They just cut Keith Jardine, so no one is safe. If Stephan Bonnar does lose this fight, I would not be surprised if they released him just to bring him back at a cheaper rate.
And you're calling Soszynski?
I'm going to say Soszynski wins this fight. I think he's a super talented guy that sky's the limit.
In a lightweight bout that has to put the victor right near the top of the lightweight contenders list, 12-2 George Sotiropoulos meets 16-4 Kurt Batman Pellegrino, as these two have been on a collision course, mounting together 2 impressive win streaks. Sotiropoulos enters with a 6-fight win streak, his most recent coming over Joe Stevenson at UFC 110, while Pellegrino looks to make it 5 straight after impressive wins in the octagon over Thiago Tavares, Josh Neer, and most recently Fabrizio Camões this past March at UFC 111.
John, a big lightweight bout on the card between George Sotiropoulos and Kurt Pellegrino, both Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. Do you feel that this will become a grappling clinic, or are both going to test out each other's chin?
Well, for fans of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or MMA Jiu-Jitsu, I want to hope that this fight goes down to the ground. Both guys have great scrambles, both guys have great sweeps, and awesome submissions from their back and from the top. So one can only hope that it becomes a grappling match. But I think the grappling will negate each other's abilities, and both guys would be forced to keep this fight standing. And I'll have to give Pellegrino the edge standing, but if the fight goes down to the ground, I would have to give the slight edge to Sotiropoulos. He seems the slicker of the two, and I think he'll be able to get the top game and work it from there.
I think these are two guys that have been very quiet at 155, but the winner to me is right at that Kenny Florian, Gray Maynard level in the lightweight division.
Again, they have to be tested. The lightweight division is so deep in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. So with the win, either of these guys could go on. Again, if Sotiropoulos wins, a guy like Nathan Diaz would be a perfect test for him, because we know that Pellegrino fought Nathan Diaz and was tapped out.
Are you going with Batman in this contest?
I'm not. I'm actually going to pick Sotiropoulos. I think he's super talented, and although Pellegrino does have the jiu-jitsu game, I think that Sotiropoulos has a better top game.
When we return, it's a look at the preliminary card action at UFC 116 set for this Saturday night in Las Vegas. In preliminary card action at UFC 116, Ultimate Fighter Season 10 finalist Brendan Schaub looks to improve to 6-1 as he meets Brock Lesnar training partner, the 18-2 Chris Teixeira, who also holds the distinction as a finalist in the one and only Yama Pit Fighting Tournament. In a middleweight bout, Ultimate Fighter Season 3 winner Kendall Grove with a record of 11-7 meets the 8-1 Croatian Goran Relic. Both men are hoping to erase their last memories of the UFC, with Grove being taken apart by Mark Munoz and Relic dropping a decision to CB Dalloway. In 205-pound action, the 12-4 Kimbo killer Seth Petrozelli returns to the UFC after a 3-year hiatus, where he has gone 4-0 in that time, and will meet the UFC debuting Ricardo Romero, who comes into the UFC with a 10-1 record as a veteran of the Ring of Combat promotion. Middleweight action on Saturday night will include 15-2 Gerald Harris taking on 6-0 Dave Branch. Harris debuted for the UFC back in January and has earned victories over John Salter and Mario Miranda, while Branch's unblemished record includes 2 wins for the Bellator Fighting Championships. Meat cleaver Forrest Petz returns to the UFC just 6 weeks removed from his victory over Ralph Johnson on the Mushin pay-per-view. Petz takes the spot of Julio Polino to take on 9-1 Daniel Roberts, who was knocked out by John Howard in his UFC debut this past March. And UFC 116 will be rounded out with a battle of undefeated heavyweights as 5-0 Hit Squad member John Madsen meets the debuting Czech fighter Carlos Vamola, who enters the UFC with a record of 7-0, with all of his bouts taking place in England up until this point.
It's UFC 116 coming up this Saturday night, featuring what John Ramdeen calls the biggest heavyweight bout of the year and perhaps of all time. Brock Lesnar, Shane Carwin this Saturday night. Enjoy the fights. On behalf of everyone at the Fight Network and here at Extreme Couture Canada, he's John Ramdeen, I'm John Pollock. Thanks for watching our breakdown of UFC 116.